Kohala, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem Kadash, double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that teach and that do rule well, and shalom to all the Akim that puts his truth and true sincerity, shalom. I'm now just messing around on Google and looking at pictures of us serving our enemies, and then just looking at this condition and this shame that was just on us, to have Esau ruling over us and we are at the very bottom. Anyways, this is Jeremiah chapter 2 and verse 14. Is Israel a servant? Is he a homeborn slave? Why is he spoiled? This is what happens when you break the law, statutes, and commandments. We become the very bottom. This is the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 15, Salasha. But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Yahweh thy power, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. This is verse 44. This is Deuteronomy chapter 28. Deuteronomy chapter 28 and verse 44. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. So we became the very bottom of the nations because of our transgression. See, this so-called black woman, a Judahite, is taking care of this Edomite girl. But to go back to the curses, it's the book of Isaiah, chapter 3, and verse 4. It's Isaiah chapter 3, verse 4. And I will give children to be their prince, and babes shall rule over them. Verse 5. And the people shall be oppressed. It's the children of Israel, everyone by another, and everyone by his neighbor. The child shall behave himself proudly against the ancient, and the base against the honorable. When you think about oppression, the first thing that should come to your head is the so-called Negroes, the Native Americans, and Hispanics, and to all the other places that children of Israel was scattered to. That's the first thing that's always coming to our minds. This is Isaiah chapter 3 and verse 8. For Jerusalem is ruined, and Judah is fallen, because their tongue and their doings against the Yahweh, to provoke the eyes of his glory, worshiping them idols. And I read verse 9. The shew of their countenance doth witness against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom. They hide it not. Woe unto their soul, for they have rewarded evil unto themselves. Verse 10. Say ye to the righteous that it shall be well with him, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings. The Most High judge you by your works. This is a quick precept. This is the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 16, verse 12. As his mercy is great, so is his correction also. He judgeth a man according to his works. So our works were evil. And what happened? We went into slavery. We went to the old and estranged land. In the book of Baruch. Back to Isaiah chapter 3. Verse 11. Woe unto the wicked, it shall be ill with him, for the reward of his hands shall be given him. This also is going into Esau for what he has done. Esau, who referred to himself today as a so-called white man, has went too far.
That damn guy is just a damn devil. Anyways, this is verse 12 of Isaiah chapter 3. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err, and destroy the way of thy paths. So verse 13. Yahweh standeth up to plead, and standeth to judge the people. Verse 12. Verse 14, Salasha. The Yahweh will enter into judgment with the ancients of his people, and the prince thereof, for ye have eaten up the vineyard, the spoil of the poor is in your houses. And let me get verse 16. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, this is verse 16 of Isaiah chapter 3. Moreover, the Yahweh said, because the daughters of Zion are haughty, and walk to the which stretch it forth necks, and wanton eyes, walking in menacing as they go, and making a tinkling with their feet, Therefore Yahweh will smite with a scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and the Yahweh will discover their secret parts, the so-called black woman. You know, the so-called, you got a lot of Judaite women, the so-called black women, you know, on the side of their heads, they barely can grow hair. Recently, this Judaite woman, so-called black woman, put the Gorilla Glue in her hair. Like how foolish can you be? Anyway, this is verse 18. In that day, the Yahweh will take away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments about their feet, and their claws, and their round tires like the moon, the chains and the bracelets and the mufflers, the bonnets and ornaments of the legs, and the headbands and the tablets and the earrings, the rings and no jewels. I'm going to skip down to verse 24. And it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell, there shall be stink, and instead of a girdle, a rent, and instead of well-set hair, baldness, and instead of some nature, a grinding of sackcloth, and burning instead of beauty. The men's, you know, so our women's have went through extreme punishment because of the hardness of their heart. And you still got this so-called black woman that's still proud and still wanna be over the man to this day. This is verse 25. Thy men shall fall by the sword, and thy mighty in the war.
You know, the fear of the Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai. This is what keeps us upright and in good standing. Make sure that we don't go off. I get that in Proverbs chapter 1 and verse 7. The fear of the Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. You know, so but looking at these pictures, and it just makes you mad. We know that the so-called Negroes, Native Americans, Hispanics been through some hell, been in captivity and just going through all types of evil. But it just makes you irritated. And to still see your peoples in asleep and still see them trusting to the same devil that has done nothing but evil towards you for more than 400 and something years. But anyway, with that, I'm going to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, by Hashem, Yahushai, by Hashem Kadash. Double honor to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that teach and do rule well, and to all the Akim that push to the truth and true sincerity. Shalom.